What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we got round two with Mark Tremonti of Alter Bridge. Great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. It's always great to talk to you. We got Pawns and Kings coming out tomorrow. Congrats on another awesome release. For people who haven't heard the full length album yet, could the first four singles that you released, This Is War, Silver Tongue, Sin After Sin, and the title track, maybe serve as a good representation of what the entirety of this album will sound like? Or is that just the tip of the iceberg and there's a lot more to be discovered?
I think that's it's a there's a couple songs on there that might be a little more upbeat, but the rest of the record, 80% of it's probably along the lines with what you heard.
Okay. Was there like a preconceived vision of what you wanted, of what you and the guys wanted Pawns and Kings to sound like, or was there like a lot of improvising and a lot of trial and error sort of like involved with the songwriting?
No, with each song, it's just whatever mood you're in at the moment, you know. So each it just ended up being a record that turned out the way it did as far as the energy. You know, that a lot of people are saying it's our heaviest record. I don't know about that, but it's definitely on the heavier side. So when me and Miles wrote demos, the songs that got chosen were probably all the most energetic, heavier leaning songs. That's how it turned out.
You ever worried that the songs you don't choose for the record will be a B side one day and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
It's happened. It's happened in the past with a lot of bands, man. You never know.
Yeah, right. Um, was this at all maybe like a continuation, or did it feel like you were sort of picking up where you left off after Walk the Sky, or being that the world has kind of changed quite a bit since I saw you on the Walk the Sky cycle with Skillet and Dirty
Yeah,
Honey, that maybe like there was sort of like uncharted territory like stepped into here?
yeah. No, I think we kind of reset. You know, it was such a long break in between records. I think we went back to even on the production on this record. We wanted to get back to the basics and make it just a straightforward rock record. Strip it down to just the two guitar tracks, drums and bass, and that's it. And put some vocals on top of it. No, not none of the post production stuff. So it's very simple production wise on this take on this record.
Yeah. I just think what's amazing about Alter Bridge is that with the entirety of your catalog, when you go from One Day Remains up to now, there seems to have always been an evolution through songwriting, but always something that resonates with people. I mean, I know it's kind of like a sort of vague and what if question, but were you able to like foresee the evolution in your songwriting? Like, would you feel like that you've gotten to where you wanted to be with Alter Bridge going from One Day Remains to Blackbird onward?
There's no telling what tomorrow holds as far as what's going to inspire you. You know, I would have never imagined. I think if you listen to the One Day Remains record and this record, it sounds like two different bands almost. So it's hopefully hopefully we keep on pushing our limits and finding new colors to put into our songs, and uh, you know continue to just find new things that inspire us, because if you just keep doing the same thing, it gets old.
Yeah, and you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't in that regard too, right? Because if you experiment too much, you'll be criticized for being directionless. You stick to a similar formula, you'll be criticized for being repetitive, right?
Exactly. That's why it's good to have multiple projects. I can go and do the Tremonti band and do the heavier metal stuff, and I can go sing with the Sinatra band, and have do the big band stuff I love so much. So I get to do a lot of variety of things, and keeps me very satisfied as an artist.
Yeah. You mentioned like the emotional elements that were incorporated in Pawns of Kings, and I like to ask that because when an emotion or a feeling inspires a song, but sometimes you're working on a song for days or weeks or maybe even years, do you find it like harder the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to kind of like maintain that emotion that initially sparked it?
Not until it comes out. I think until you release a song to the world, it keeps that excitement, because you're anticipating how people will react to it. It's like you're creating this baby to release them to the world that everybody's going to be able to share in. So I think once the record's been out for 6 months, then it's kind of lost its luster, and you want to go on and make something fresh and new again.
Okay. So you don't think the emotional aspect can be lost until after it's done, pretty much, right?
I think so. Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so as well. And I think for like a lot of diehard fans, like when people listen to Alter Bridge, you have a very dedicated fan base. I think a lot of people could tell that that would be off of AB3, that would be off of Fortress, and so on and so forth. So like, is it fair to say that maybe every album is almost kind of like a snapshot of who you and Miles and everybody in the band were like at that time in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think each record is definitely a snapshot of what we were going through at that time. You can't, people ask us, why do you do three-year record cycles with Alter Bridge? And our response is you have to live life. You've got to experience things. And what you're experiencing and what you see around you, what you see on the news, what you read in a book, what you see your friends going through or you're going through, that goes into your lyric writing and the emotions you put into your song. So you have to, each record is definitely, a little time capsule of that period of time.
And you mentioned too, like with stuff that you're reading and everything that's happening in the world. Does all the emotion that you channel into your instrument, is that all coming from internally, or are you like, is there like a lot of observation involved within your songwriting process, and are you looking at other mediums of art?
Um, you know, Sometimes I'll write, you know, um, fictional things, fictional things. I did the Dying Machine record with Tremonti, where it's all a concept record of a story that I made up. So it was cool to be able to write from a different person, a made up person's point of view, and create a story. So that was um, one way to go about things. And another thing is just like I said, whatever you're going through in life, you sing about. Whatever your friends are going through, if somebody's going through some trials, and you sing about it. You can't get away from the news, so whatever's going on in the world. People think that this record has to do with the war because there's so many, there's This Is War on the record, and there's Pawns and Kings, and there's a bunch of songs that could be linked to that. But this record was written before the war broke out, so it wasn't the case.
Yeah, well, that's artists are always able to foresee things beyond the present, right? So
Yeah, who knows?
yeah, I can't tell you how many songs you've written, whether it will be with Creed or Alter Bridge or Tremonti, that have aged pretty well over the years, I must say.
Thank you very much.
And when you think of those concepts, though, like, do they almost serve as like an external metaphor of who you personally are? Because one thing I've always know is I've always heard that music is a way to address demons or like address yourself. But I've also heard in the same breath people say that music is an escapism in a way. Could it ever be both, or do you think like a song is kind of like one or the other in that regard?
It's whatever you want it to be. You can be as it's the funny thing about writing songs and lyrics is you can be as personal, more personal than you'd feel comfortable with being in a conversation with somebody, but you can put it on a record for, thousands and thousands of people to hear. And you can claim it's not about yourself. You can claim it's about somebody else. So you can be as personal as you want about yourself, and people might not ever know that's actually about you.
Hmm.
And I've done that a few times along the way.
Yeah. And do you think people's interpretations of it or their experience of it can maybe add a layer of context to it as well, especially when maybe you're playing it live and you're bringing songs from different eras into one night?
Yeah, man. I mean, these songs become something that, like a song like Blackbird or In Loving Memory, or, songs about loss, especially. People tell you their stories and show you pictures of their loved ones who have passed away. Or I've met a couple whose daughter died, and they had the lyrics to In Loving Memory on her gravestone. And that just, when somebody tells you that, it hits you really, really hard. So when you play those songs live, you remember all these stories. So the songs become much more than they initially were when you first wrote them. They have all these layers and layers and layers of all these other people's experiences to put into the songs as well.
Yeah, and that can that also be a new source of inspiration to write another song as well. I'd imagine human interaction and hearing these stories. Like I've heard some people say that when you're an artist for a very long time, and you guys have been doing this really well for a very long time, that inspiration sort of like dies. You don't get inspired as you do it more. But I'd imagine as you meet people and hear these stories, it almost is kind of like a whole new smorgasbord of inspiration, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard to not stay inspired when you're continuing to do what you love doing. You're out there, like you said, meeting people, hearing their stories, playing songs, and seeing people's reaction to them is such a rush for a band. When you can create something from nothing, this immaterial thing that means so much to people. It's this. I think music is about the closest thing to magic there is. It's something that affects people so deeply since for I don't know how many thousands of years, and it's something that who knows why, but I love tapping into it. I think it's a magical thing being able to see the transformation of music notes and melodies into how it affects people's lives.
Yeah, and for all of eternity too. Like when you go like from the tribal to the days of
Yeah.
tribalism, and like how rhythm has always impacted people, and then like gospel churches
Mhm.
and all that, and it evolved so much. And I've always wondered. I know it's like a very scientific and sort of like why question, but there, I wonder
Mhm.
what it is about the human psyche that melody or rhythm instantly engages people into like an altered state of mind.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, because I know I'm one of those people that music absolutely hits me hard. I'm one of those people that get chills all the time listening to good songs, and it's something that that's why I've wanted to chase down being a songwriter my whole life. I think it's more important than to me. People have always talked about me as being a guitar player, but I always stress the fact I'm a songwriter before anything. That's what I like to do is create songs and write melodies. And to me, it's what gets me excited about hearing. When I hear bands, I don't necessarily get super excited about the guitar solos. I get excited about the songs and the melodies. That's what gets me going. So yeah, it's a magical thing.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't matter if you have Randy Rhoads in the band. Like, if the song isn't good, you could have a great solo. I mean, there's people who could play a shredding guitar solo to the album, like playing Joe Satriani to the album. But you put them. How can they write a catchy chorus or a hook or something like that? That's
Yeah.
in alone. Do you think songwriting, the talent of songwriting, is that something that could actually be learned? Being that experience and emotion is channeled into it, do you think that could actually be learned, or is that kind of like a skill that you either have it or you don't?
Well, I think first of all, you have to be a passionate person that loves whatever you're doing to get into it. But I actually do guitar clinics on tour where I teach songwriting. It's like a songwriting clinic, really. So I teach people how I go about writing songs, and um, there are, there's no rules. The thing about writing songs is you can do it any way you want from any kind of crazy influence or any kind of approach. But I show some simple things that could get people started, and I think once people take those things, they have to have that frame of mind to want to do it. I think people doubt themselves too much when it comes to being creative. Um, so I tell people how to try to get through that in their minds and not be shy and go for it. And I hope some of the people that I've talked with have written some songs. I'd love to hear them.
Artists have every artist, whether you're a painter or a musician, a filmmaker, artists always say things to themselves that they would never say to their worst enemies. Going back to what you said about the self
Yeah.
doubt thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, man. I think that's probably the first thing. You gotta be passionate, and you gotta not doubt yourself, and you gotta dive in, and you're never gonna write a song if you don't start trying. I think that's what most things in life. There's so many things out there that people want to do. Whether it be I want to be a learn how to ski or learn how to sing or learn how to do this or do that. You can do any of it if you don't doubt yourself and you put everything you got into it.
Mhm.
Most of the things nowadays with YouTube, you can learn how to do almost anything.
Yeah, definitely. YouTube does literally have everything. They're putting songs and demos up on YouTube that you never would have thought you'd have access to.
You know what? I've got this list right here in front of me of songs that I need to learn for the upcoming Ultra Bridge tour. And I can't tell you how many times I forget how to play the songs and I get on YouTube and I type in the song and I put guitar lesson and I see somebody else playing the song that I wrote. And I'm like, oh, I remember that. Okay, that's the tuning. And I just so I don't have to waste a half an hour, I'll just go and hopefully find me teaching the song. But if it's not me, I'll find somebody else teaching the song to re-jog my memory. And there's so many guitar players that admit that same thing.
Yeah, I've seen some covers of your songs on YouTube. I'll never forget hearing the cover for Zero, and as somebody was covering that, and the way that they strummed it just so beautifully. Like, that's
Nice.
it's awesome when you, as a teacher, could also learn from your students. Have you ever like stopped in the middle of a lesson because a student like hit a note that just struck a nerve with you? And be like, "Hey, I'll be right back," and like ran into your car and just like started writing something.
No, well, when I do the songwriting clinics, I show people what I do, and I'll say, all right, let me show you an example. And as I'm doing it, there's so many times where I'll say, all right, stop, guys. Okay, now I'm going to record the idea, tell myself how I did it, tell me that I'm telling myself the tuning and whatever else. And on the last tour I did with the last record I put out with Tremonti, the title track "Marching in Time" was started in one of those songwriting clinics, and I have the actual audio of me sitting in a clinic saying, all right, now I'm going to write a melody to this part, and it's the melody and the music for the verse of Marching in Time. So it's kind of one of those things. I practice what I preach when I'm teaching people. It's exactly what I do, and you see how it works, because I have the example of me sitting in front of 20 people and that song coming together in that moment, doing what I say, when I'm saying that people could try to do to get started.
Definitely, definitely. That recording's a piece of history right there, and they didn't even
Yeah,
know it
man.
yet. I have two more questions for you, but when it comes to the songwriting in a band, obviously a band is a team effort, whether you are songwriting or playing live. But do you think it's better if everybody in the band is in the same frame of mind when writing something, or do you think if everybody was kind of like it a little bit in their own headspace or feeling different things, that could maybe actually help bring like new elements to the song and bring contrast and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both help and hurt at the same time. I think certain songs it might go off at a 180 degree and bring some new idea in, but sometimes that could be distracting as well. I think for the most part, there's only been a handful of songs in our 7 record career with Alter Bridge that I feel like we might have ruined a few songs along the way. But other than that, putting all of our efforts in have only improved almost all of them. So I'm always open minded to, unless it's a song that you are absolutely in love with every part of a song and it means a ton to you, then you'll stand up for it and say, no, this needs to be this way. And if you guys don't agree, Miles has his solo band, I have my solo band, Scott plays with Projected. You can always, if you're so passionate about something, you can hold it and put it in your other band. But for the most part, everybody in Alter Bridge, we get along so well, we can communicate so well that nobody's ruining anybody else's time by saying something needs to be changed.
Fair enough. And brutal honesty is always good as well, but also, understanding and maybe, like putting yourself in your bandmate's shoes could also really help you learn a thing or two.
Absolutely.
Yep. And finally, I wanted to ask you because I feel like this is also an important year because this year does mark 10 years since the debut Tremonti album, All I Was. Just kind of wanted to go back in time a little bit. What was the sort of mindset with the songwriting in that, and how did it sort of like evolve within the rest of your solo career? And did that at all maybe help you bring some new stuff into Alter Bridge as well?
Yeah, so that started when Miles was out with. We had done a Creed reunion tour, and then Miles booked some shows with Slash, and then I had a 3-month gap. It was one of the biggest gaps I ever had of not touring. So I called Eric Friedman, my buddy and guitar player in Tremonti. Said, let's put together some demos. I just want to record some music and just put it out. And at that point, we weren't even planning on doing a band or anything. I just had, every time I'd go into Alter Bridge writing mode, I'd say, all right, guys, check out this riff. And I'd play these metal riffs, and they'd all look at me funny, like, that's too metal. So I'd have all these riffs that I loved stacked up and all these songs that I loved that just didn't ever fly with Alter Bridge. So I recorded all those songs immediately and put it out on these demos and then finally we turned it, once we got into the mixing process, we're like, let's just do this as a band, let's and now we're 5 records deep with that. But I think what I've learned most is being a performer, being a front man, being a better singer, building more confidence as a performer. You can't get on stage and care too much about how you come across. You just got to be yourself and don't, because I think you're your own worst enemy. And I think getting up there and being a front man singer and having to talk to the crowd all night, that will shake you out of being shy on stage after a while. So I think that helps.
Yeah.
On that aspect. And lyric writing, that's another thing that helped a lot through the solo process. Being creative in multiple ways, trying to write different styles of music.
Yeah. I think when I've watched you live, I could tell that you go into another zone and that you go on stage, and that's very admirable. I think you bring us into another reality as you go into another reality when you play.
Yeah, it's almost like off stage I'm a shy kind of person, and when I step on stage, it's almost like I flip a switch, turn into somebody else. I'm 2 completely different people. My kids after shows will speak like, Dad, you sweared on stage, or you that's it's crazy to see who you are on stage. So they see the big difference of me off stage and on stage, and it's just something that kind of develops.
Yeah.
You know, it's your stage persona.
Definitely over time. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for coming back on the show, and thanks as always for always a great conversation. Just you know, the usual plugs with Pawns and Kings coming out tomorrow. Is there any tours that are announced that you'd like to plug, and anything else we could be expecting from Alter Bridge in 2023?
Yeah, we're touring the States in, I think, January. We're doing a 3-week tour in January, February, taking a 2-week break, and then doing another 3-week tour in the States early next year. And then I'll be doing Sinatra shows. I have one in London on December 15th, one in Orlando on December 29th, one in New York on March 2nd. And I'll be trying to do as many Sinatra shows along the way as I can, along with Alter Bridge. And then next summer, we're going to hit all the big festivals. So hopefully we'll be touring all through next year. So just Google Alter Bridge Tour, and you'll keep up to date.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Mark Tremonti of Alter Bridge, Pawns and Kings. Be sure to pick it up. If you're watching this on Friday, on release day, pick it up now while supplies last forever. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.